What is up, guys, and welcome back to another Grimlock video. Today we got a banger. Okay, we are going over an ultimate guide for the Augmentation Evoker specialization. Absolutely crazy specialization, disgusting to play against. We know it, guys, but we're dialing it in. We're doing all the builds. We're going to be showing the PvP talents, the normal talents, the Augmentation Evoker talents. We're going to be going over the items that you need to get for PvP, as well as the macros and everything you need to know about the burst rotation for Augmentation Evoker. So, without further ado, we'll get into the video. But if you enjoy this content, please feel free to like, subscribe, and head on over to Twitch and follow my Twitch channel. We're at 25 out of 50 followers, which is insane. We're popping off over there. It's actually really fun streaming. So I hope you guys enjoy this, and I'll see you guys in a second. Alright, guys, so to kick things off, we're going to start with the Evoker side of the talent tree. We're going to be going over talents first, and then we'll go into the burst rotation. Also, I'm going to timestamp this video, so if you want to skip ahead to any part in the video, feel free to. You can look at our macros first, you can look at anything first. It doesn't matter the order, as long as you're looking at the guide, baby. But either way, we're looking at Evoker talents. So, just so you know, Augmentation gets Landslide and Obsidian Scales. I don't know if the other specs get these for free, but they should, because they're actually disgusting. But yeah, so we get those for free. We do take Expunge, and the reason why we take Expunge is Verdant Embrace is a substantial amount of healing and damage for us, and I'll explain that later on in this video. Also, Scarlet Adaptation is crazy good. But either way, so yes, we take Expunge, which is funny because I actually need to use this more versus Rogues. I forget that I even have it. It's a terrible thing. The only problem with Expunge is it is kind of costly on mana. You know, it's 25k. It's a little ridiculous seeing it. All it does is remove poisons. But either way, moving on to the next thing, we take Natural Convergence, guys. This makes our Eruption cast time 20% reduced, which means we can cast off far more eruptions during our burst windows, or just in general. I mean, it's just nice, because if we didn't have this, our Eruption would take like 2 seconds to cast, which is like a Chaos Bolt, and I mean, it does pretty much the same damage as Chaos Bolt, but yeah, it's faster, so that's pretty crazy. We do take Permeating Chill. Now, the main reason we take Permeating Chill is to get Obsidian Bulwark, but having a slow built into our Azure Strike is crazy. Now, I will say the only blue spell we have that's damaging is Azure Strike, so technically, if you know like a composition isn't going to go you, or you don't need that 50% slow, you don't need to take Permeating Chill or Obsidian Bulwark, but it's pretty good versus pretty much everything. I don't think I've ever untalented it. So yeah, I would definitely suggest taking Permeating Chill. Make sure Azure Strike a 50% slow, basically. Verdant Embrace is just a really nice heal. Now, Verdant Embrace does work off of... sorry, I'm moving away from the noise there. So Verdant Embrace, the reason why it's so good is because of Dreamwalker's Embrace. Now, I almost use Dreamwalker's Embrace every game because I play with a Death Knight, and so a lot of the times we're in melee range, we have targets in between us, and so it's actually doing a lot of life siphoning. But yeah, Verdant Embrace is just a nice heal that you can give to an ally, or if you don't fly to an ally, you can actually just heal yourself with it, like that, which is pretty nice. It's like I would say like an 100k range, maybe 80k range heal in PvP combat, so it's not too bad for an instant cast heal either. We do take Forger of Mountains. Now, this is super important actually as Augmentation Evoker, because we take this talent over in the Augmentation Evoker side of the tree, which is Seismic Slam, which basically means every single minute we're going to be able to basically leg sweep, is what I like to say, but it's a leg sweep with a built-in like 100k damage, which is pretty ridiculous. So as a Windwalker Monk player, Landslide, super good. It's basically your leg sweep, as long as you time it with your upheaval. But yeah, we take Forger of Mountains. Also, this is nice because it makes your root withstand more damage before breaking. So if people are like running away behind line of sight and you just need a way to do a little bit more damage to them, you can actually root them in your line of sight and do some damage before it actually breaks, which is really good. We do take Obsidian Bulwark. This just gives us a second charge of our shield wall, which is a ridiculous shield wall. I think people neglect how strong Obsidian Scales is. I think people think it's like 20%, but it's actually 30% damage reduction, which is crazy strong, and it lasts a long time. 14 seconds, pretty crazy to have 2 charges of that on a 1.5-minute cooldown. It's like having kind of like a worse version of Astral Bulwark, but like I don't know. It's pretty good. Astral Shift, rather. Sorry, but it's pretty strong. And you have 2 charges of it. Enkindled, this is just good. It just makes your Living Flame do a little bit more damage and healing. Scarlet Adaptation makes it so that you store healing to make your next Living Flame do more damage. So when we're doing damage, guys, I'm going to be pressing Verdant Embrace, which allows me to store the healing that I'm doing in my Living Flames. So every single time I Living Flame, I'm doing way more damage with them, which is really nice. And it actually causes Living Flame to do a significant amount of damage. I've hit for easily over 100k with my Living Flames just because of Scarlet Adaptation. We do take Quell. This is just our kick. Super important you take Quell. If you don't take Quell, I don't know what you're doing. It's kind of like a must pick. There's really nothing you can do about not taking this. It's pretty much you're going to take it every game because you're going to want to kick for either the healer or one of the spell DPS in the game. We do take Cauterizing Flame. Now, this is actually really good. 1 minute cooldown, 25k mana, but it removes Bleed, Poison, Curse, and Disease all at once. And if it removes any of those, it heals you for basically like 50k. So the nice part about Cauterizing Flame is, say you're fighting an Assassination Rogue. This removes Death Mark, which is crazy strong. And it also removes, when you're fighting Warriors, Thunderous Roar, which is a big part of their damage. It also removes Odin's Fury, I believe, which is crazy strong. It removes Curse of Tongues, removes Curse of Weakness from you. It removes Devouring Plague. It removes all the diseases that Death Knights throw up, which is a huge portion of their damage as well. So it's super, super important when you're fighting against those classes to actually use this a lot. Try to use it off cooldown versus certain classes. You don't want to use this off cooldown versus Warriors, though, and versus Sin Rogues, because you want to save it for their either Thunderous Roar or their Death Mark. If you use it before Death Mark, you're actually going to die to Death Mark, which this could easily just remove it completely and make the cooldown useless every single time it's off cooldown, which is crazy because it's only a minute cooldown, right? So if you think about it, Death Mark isn't a minute cooldown. I believe Death Mark's a 2-minute cooldown. So every single time they have Death Mark, you will have Cauterizing Flame to just immediately remove it. And you can use it on allies as well. So if your ally gets Death Marked or Thunderous Roared, you can remove it instantly too. Crazy, crazy strong, guys. You need to get use out of this ability. Ancient Flame, super strong as well. Every single time I Verdant Embrace, my Living Flame is going to be a super fast cast. So you can Verdant Embrace, Living Flame, and then you can Emerald Blossom Living Flame. If you want to incorporate some healing in there. The nice part about this is it also is stacking your Scarlet Adaptation because you're doing the healing and then your Living Flame is faster and then you're doing the healing and then the Living Flame is faster. So you're getting a lot of decent burst damage out of just Ancient Flame and Scarlet Adaptation alone. Moving on to Instinctive Arcana. This just increases your damage done by a flat 4%, which is crazy good. I mean, also pretty much a must take. Tip the Scales, also a must take. This is a huge and crucial part of our burst. This allows us to instantly cast our Fire Breath at max empowerment level, which is really strong. You can do easily over 120 to 130k pretty consistently with Tip the Scales every 2 minutes. Very good. And it lines up with your Breath of the Eons being an augmentation evoker. Your Breath of the Eons is a 2-minute cooldown. Tip the Scales is a 2-minute cooldown. So every single time you have one of them off cooldown, you're going to have the other one off cooldown as well. Sleepwalk, this is basically our one crowd control. Super, super strong too. It's a sleep that has a chance to waken people when you hit them, not 100% chance. So that means that it's not like a polymorph where you accidentally hit them and they break out of the sleep. This is more like a fear effect, except for instead of running away from you, they slowly walk towards you. Now the nice part about Sleepwalk is you can actually guide people into things they don't want to be guided into because you know that the pathing of it is they're going to walk towards you. Now the fact is they walk really slowly, so you can still force them out of line of sight with this, but yeah, it's a pretty strong crowd control. I would say this is basically like a better Hex, I guess, because Hex you can still like run freely as a frog. It's the same cooldown if you have the improved Hex, but yeah, it's pretty good. It's really strong. Regenerative Magic, I take this just kind of as a guidance thing, but you know, 3% leech isn't bad. If you look at like some past like 3v3 games, like, let's look at here. My leech is like 5% of my total healing overall, which isn't bad if you think about it. You know, leech is pretty good in general for Augmentation Evoker. Not too bad at all. We do take Draconic Legacy. This makes our stamina increase by 6%, which is actually a little bit better than a normal Priest Fort buff. And it stacks with everything, so it's like, why not take 6% increased on one talent point? It's pretty crazy, pretty good. Extended flight, hover lasts 4 seconds longer. This is really good. It's really good because now your hover is lasting, you know, upwards of like 12 seconds. It could last even longer depending on like what else you take. It's pretty crazy, man. And you have it up every 30 seconds on two charges, which is pretty crazy considering you can time skip it too. You basically are hovering like 90% of the game, which is a really strong feeling. I really like hover, and to have it last 4 seconds longer per charge is crazy good. Take Blast Furnace. This just makes our Fire Breath's damage over time last a little longer, which the Fire Breath dot actually does tick pretty hard. You know, it can tick upwards of like 20 to 40k even in combat, which is pretty crazy. I've had it tick pretty hard in PvP. Now, I will say, if you low charge your Fire Breath, it will last a lot longer and tick over time for a lot longer, which is okay. Really, as Augmentation Evoker, you want to just do as big burst damage as possible with your Fire Breath, so you want to charge it for as long as possible. Whereas Devastation Evoker, for instance, it's okay to have it ticking for longer because you'll get instant cast Living Flame procs from that, which is really good, and you don't get that as Augmentation Evoker. So you want to make sure with Fire Breath as Augmentation, you're holding your empowerment level for as long as possible. Most of the time I get it to 2 or 3 before I swap off, at least outside of Tip the Scales. If I tip the scales, obviously I tip the scales and it's fully empowered. Now, if I can fully channel a Fire Breath, I like to call for my Death Knight to grip people into it because it's going to be a big amount of damage. You know, I could easily do 100k to everything in that range, which is pretty nice. But basically every button I press is doing 100k, which is ridiculous. But yeah, so Blast Furnace, we take Panacea. Now this is a great button because this just makes it so every single time you cast Emerald Blossom, you're healing yourself, which actually procs the Scarlet adaptation. So you don't need to wait for your Emerald Blossom to actually bloom like that, bloom heal. You can actually just press like Emerald Blossom and you'll get the full effect of Scarlet adaptation and Ancient Flame, as long as you're taking damage, which is really good. So you can Verdant Embrace and Emerald Blossom, both instant cast heals, both heal for a pretty solid amount, I would say. Now, we do take Oppressing Roar. Oppressing Roar is really strong. It's something that a lot of people forget about that they even have. But if you can line it up before your burst damage go, you're 100% forcing something. And if they have nothing left, you're 100% killing somebody because of how long your stuns, your silences, your sleepwalk, everything, your fears, anything you're playing with, your polymorph if you're playing with a mage, it's going to last so much longer in PvP. It's so gross. It's disgusting, dude. You can get like, I think it's like 9-second long sleepwalks in PvP, and your stuns last like 5 seconds instead of the normal 3. It's pretty crazy. It's really good. So yeah, Pressing Roar. Make sure you're pressing this button before your burst goes if you can. A lot of times I like to Pressing Roar and sleepwalk somebody so that they're out in the middle of the open and then get my go off. This way they can't avoid the go at all, which is really strong. But yeah, Pressing Roar is really good. Also, you can time skip it, so it lines up perfectly with your go. So every single time you have a Pressing Roar, you're going to have Breath of Eons and you're going to have Tip the Scales. So try to use it every single time you can. Rescue. I do take Rescue. I love Rescue. I think it's super strong, especially when you're playing with a melee DPS. It's really good if you're playing with a caster too, because you can keep melee DPS off your casters for as long as possible. You can use this to avoid getting trapped on your healer because you can rescue them before a trap lands. You can avoid priest fears because you can see when a priest is running in to get the fear. You just rescue them and pull them away, and possibly make them miss the fear. You can pull them line of sight so they don't take damage. Rescue is just a really strong cooldown, and again, it's only a 1-minute cooldown, so the fact that it's a 1-minute cooldown makes it even better. We do take Renewing Blaze. Now I take Foci of Life, just to give you guys an example, but Fire Within actually isn't bad because it would make a 1-minute cooldown. It depends on what healer you're playing with, though. I think if you're playing with like a Restoration Druid, you could probably get away with playing Fire Within, but Foci of Life is really good for getting these big burst heals back. It's also really good if you're playing versus like a mage or something like that can spell steal your Renewing Blaze. You want to make sure, or purge it, you want to make sure you're getting as much healing as possible in a short window, because if they're purging it off, you want to just at least get some healing from it. But if you're not playing against a purge, say you're playing against TSG with a Mistweaver or something like that, Fire Within actually is pretty good because every single minute you're going to have this off cooldown, and it's going to heal you. It'll heal over time. It'll take a little bit longer. It'll take basically double the amount of time, but you're going to heal back for all the damage you're being dealt, which is pretty good. So yeah, you guys can decide which one feels better for you. I like Focus of Life, but for certain comps, I will take Fire Within just to reduce the cooldown of Renewing Blaze. If you guys didn't know, what Renewing Blaze does is for 9 seconds, basically all the damage you take will be healed back to you over 4 or 8 seconds, depending on which talent you take. But yeah, so it's not too bad. On a 1.5-minute cooldown, you can pre-Renewing Blaze a stun and completely nullify somebody's go if you're like fighting against a rogue, as long as you have some damage mitigation here or there. But yeah, Renewing Blaze is very strong. Leaping Flames, this is very good in my opinion. And there's a big reason why it's good. So when you tip the scales Fire Breath during your burst, this is going to make your next Living Flame strike a lot of targets, including healing, which is really nice because it doesn't say enemy. It says one additional target. So if you're healing your whole team and you're doing damage to the whole enemy team at this point with your Living Flame, that means you have a really, really high chance of proccing Essence Burst, because Essence Burst has a chance per Living Flame that goes out to proc, which is really good. So you're basically trying to get, when you Breath of Eons and you tip the scales Fire Breath, your next Living Flame is going to hit everybody. You're going to get instantly to Essence Burst, or you're going to hope you do, which will make your Eruption cast even faster, and it'll also make your Eruption cast free, which is really good. So Leaping Flames is very important as an augmentation evoker, very important. This makes you get Essence Burst very quick, and also outside of your goes, just pressing Fire Breath into Leaping Flame, like into Living Flame, is a really good way to get your Essence Burst rolling. Keeps your damage high, keeps your damage sustainable. Aerial Mastery, this is almost a must take in my opinion. Hover gains an additional charge. I mean, you want to have 2 charges of hover. If you don't have 2 charges of hover, you're going to get caught up to really easily by melee, and it's going to be really hard to kite them, even with your slow. So you want to make sure you can kind of separate yourself every single time. Like a warrior charges you, you can hover away. A warrior charges you again, you can hover away again. And then a warrior leaps on you, you can Verdant Embrace to a teammate, and then they're out of mobility. So you want to be able to kind of separate yourself from melee as much as possible. I do take Twin Guardian. This is a ridiculously strong button. It's basically kind of like a mini life cocoon every single minute. And if you use your rescue before you time skip, it's actually every 30 seconds for the first 2 rescues, which is really good. So you can actually rescue, get a full 30% shield, time skip, 30 seconds later you can rescue again, get another 30% shield. Very strong, ladies and gentlemen, crazy. I would already explain Focus of Life and Fire Within. Terror of the Skies, I do take this. This just makes Breath of Eon stun people. Now, like I said, it says stuns enemies for 3 seconds, but if you were pressing Roar first, it actually makes them stunned for 4.5 seconds, which is crazy, crazy long time to be stunned. Basically, you're immediately AoE cheap-shotting everybody by yourself, which is crazy strong. And then we take Time Spiral. I like taking Time Spiral. I think it's really strong. It basically just allows us to get another hover charge, but it also allows all your allies to get a use of one of their major movement abilities as well. So, your allies get another use of roll. They get another use of, God, I can't think. I think priests get another use of Leap of Faith, which is kind of funny. I think Death Knights get another use of Death's Advance. So, any of the classes you play with, mages get another use of Blink. So yeah, you get a lot of things that benefit you when you're playing Time Spiral. Yeah, this is basically our talent tree. Just keep in mind, some things can change. It's not the end of the world. There's not a lot of damage going out here. Super important things to note. You definitely want to take Forger of Mountains, Verdant Embrace, Scarlet Adaptation, and Ancient Flame. Those are really important. And also I really like Rescue and Twin Guardian, but that's just a personal preference. So those couple of talents I would say are unchangeable. Oh, and Tip the Scales. Obviously you need Tip the Scales. But yeah, let's move into the Augmentation Evoker tree. All right, so moving into the Augmentation Talents, obviously we pick up Ebon Might. Eruption. Now, I hate that Eruption is like a must take because I actually really like using Disintegrate. But yeah, Eruption basically just makes it so that every single time you cast Eruption, you increase the duration of your Ebonite. It does a significant amount of damage. I hit Eruptions for like 130k pretty consistently. Essence Burst. This just makes it so that your Living Flame and Azure Strike have a chance to make your Eruption cost no essence, which is really good. I do take Imposing Presence. I don't think I ever would take Inner Radiance. I just don't think it's good enough. Living Flame doing 30% more healing is pretty good, but you already have so much survivability as Augmentation Evoker that having like half the cooldown on Quell is really strong. So yeah, I take Imposing Presence every single game. Ricocheting Pyroclast. Now this is a very important talent. This basically makes it so that if your Eruption hits more than one enemy, it's dealing a lot more damage, up to 150% more damage. Now, if you think about it, Eruption can already do, you know, 60 to 70k. So if you're doing 150% more damage during your burst windows, you can actually hit Eruptions for like 150, 200k even, depending on how many people you're hitting at a time. So I've hit Eruptions for very, very high numbers and just like 3-shot people, which is crazy. Essence Attunement. This basically just allows your Essence Burst to stack. It's super important, super needed. I do get Pupil of Alexstrasza. Now, this makes it so that your Living Flame strikes one additional enemy for all of its damage. So outside of your damage goes, and you're just hovering around, you're going to be slamming people with Living Flame, because the more people you hit with Living Flame, the more Essence Bursts you get. The more Essence Bursts you get, the more Eruptions you get. The more Eruptions you get, the more time you have Ebonite up, because your Eruption increases the duration of Ebonite. So you want to be making sure to balance out your Living Flame and Eruption casts. But yeah, you're basically spamming those back and forth. Upheaval. This is our big burst damage. Every 40 seconds. It's pretty disgusting. I can get it lower because we do take... where is it? We do take Accretion. So every single time we Eruption... our Upheaval's cooldown gets reduced by 1 second, which is really important. But yeah, Upheaval is basically a charge. Now, I will say the amount of time you charge Upheaval does not matter. All that charging Upheaval does is increase the radius of how many people it hits. So I would say it's almost never good to charge your Upheaval fully like this. Like, there's no reason to do that. You only need like 2. Max is like your 2 charge Upheaval. It's plenty of room when you death grip somebody in like that to actually hit everybody. Sometimes if you just cast it at 1, you'll only hit 1 target, which isn't the end of the world, because at the end of the day we're only hitting like 1 major target. That's like our big burst damage. But if you hit multiple people with Eruption or Upheaval, it's really good, because you can actually do a lot of AoE damage as a Augmentation Evoker. But yeah, so Upheaval is good, but don't charge it up fully. Also, Upheaval increases the Ebonite duration, which is pretty standard. Breath of Eons. This is our version of Deep Breath as an Augmentation Evoker. It's really, really good. It does stun with the Terror of the Skies, and also it accumulates all the damage that your teammates are doing, 12% of all the damage your teammates are doing, as well as you, as long as they're affected by Ebonite, and then it'll critically strike for that amount. So I've had this actually hit like for 101k, like from 1 tick of it, and then I've done like 90k from it, and then my other teammate is like my healer, so he does like 15k or whatever, you know. So I've had it hit for over 200k when it expires, which is pretty crazy if you think about it. Also, something to note is this does apply Ebonite for 5 seconds, so most of the time your burst windows are quick enough that you don't actually need to cast Ebonite before you Breath of Eon. So if you need to go in and do damage as fast as possible, your Death Knight can like Death Grip into a blind, and you could just immediately Breath of Eons over it. You don't need to up Ebonite first, because it applies Ebonite. So you know, you can actually just stack up like your Essence Burst, or you can get a proc like Sophic Devotion and immediately go. You don't need to wait for your Ebonite to be stacked up, because your Ebonite automatically like applies on your Breath of Eons, which is pretty nice if you think about it. So the fact that you can actually go without having to cast something is very strong as an Augmentation Evoker. So yeah, that's our Breath of Eons. It's crazy good. Defy Fate. This is basically a cheat death. Super strong. Every single time, or like every 6 minutes, if you drop below, fatal level, you'll get healed for a pretty big burst amount, and then it just slowly declines and burst heals over time. This also heals everybody around you for some reason. I don't know why, honestly. It's pretty unnecessary. But yeah, it heals you for a lot, which is really great. So, that's kind of nice. So it heals you for like 200k, and then it'll heal you for like, 20k, then 10k, then 5k, then 1k, so it's like a little small heal, but basically total heals you for about 270k, which is pretty good for something that just prevents you from dying. Timelessness, if you don't take, it's pretty garbage. It just reduces the amount of threat that you generate, which is useless for PvP. Useless. Seismic Slam. Now, this basically causes your landslide to cause enemies who are mid-air to be slammed to the ground. Now, the nice part about this is if somebody is jumping, you can actually landslide them and crush them into the ground, and it'll stun them, which is funny. So you don't actually need to upheaval into it. If you catch somebody jumping, you can actually landslide them into the ground. So note, if you're playing against an Augmentation Evoker, try not to jump as much as possible, because you can accidentally get yourself stunned just by jumping. So, yeah. But most of the time, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to upheaval, like a one-charge upheaval, into a landslide, like that. And that will actually root them, because they'll be in the, it'll stun them, because they'll be in the air that whole time, which is pretty crazy. Now, I'm going to show you some macros so that you can instantly cast out your landslide, because it's kind of hard to get the timing right if you don't have, like, a Landslide at Cursor macro. If you don't, you'll have to like press landslide and then click the ground, and by the time you do that and the animation for landslide comes out, sometimes the enemy might already be on the ground, which is a problem. So we'll cover that in macros later. But yeah, Seismic Slam, super important. This makes you have a actually a pretty good stun on like a minute cooldown, but with time skip, it's actually like a 30-second cooldown for a couple of goes, which is really good. Volcanism, this just makes Eruption cost 1 less to cast, which is pretty good because if you look at it, we only have 5 Essence, and if we didn't take Volcanism, we'd only be able to cast 1 Eruption and then wait, and then 1 Eruption and then wait. It would take forever to cast out Eruptions, whereas if we have 2, we can cast an Eruption, the cooldown will come up, Eruption, so you can actually Eruption a lot more just based on this one talent alone. We do take Chrono Word. This actually absorbs a lot of damage. Actually, let's look at a past game here. This game. So this game lasted a while too. You can see. Wow, it only lasted 2 minutes. But yeah, you can get a point. My Chrono Word in 2 minutes absorbed 700k damage. This is my highest healing. Just on Chrono Word alone, which is pretty crazy. This is pretty wild just for a talent. So yeah, definitely take that. I don't think Perilous Fate is worth it, but I will say this might be worth it versus Outlaw Rogues, because Outlaw Rogues rely on their attack speed to do a lot of damage with their mastery, and if you hit an Outlaw Rogue with Breath of Eons, they will attack 50% slower. This also is good versus Arms Warriors too, but yeah, 50% slower attack speed is crazy strong versus certain classes. I will say though, Chrono Ward is a great way to heal through burst damage by doing burst as well, which is really good. So yeah, that's those 2 talents. Blistering Scales, super important. This is like crazy survivability. Increases your armor by 30%, which is crazy, and with Molten Blood, it absorbs like a lot of damage. It's like a life cocoon on a 30-second cooldown. Super strong. Also, it does a lot of damage. I noticed some games, it's like my 4th top damage, which is crazy. Like, let's see here. Like this, dude. Like, I put on my teammate, it did 2 mil damage this game, which is insane. Like 2 mil damage from a defensive ability is crazy, dude. It's like Thorns on crack. So yeah, Blistering Scales, crazy good. I will note, it says Blistering Scales can only be placed on 1 target at a time, which makes sense. Cast on your enemy's target if they have one. So what happens is if you're playing and you have Blistering Scales on your teammate and you are rotting to like rot damage from like an Affliction Warlock, and you go to cast Blistering Scales on yourself to give yourself the absorb, but they're targeting your teammate, it will actually cast Blistering Scales on your teammate instead of you. So you need to make sure, if you want to Blistering Scales yourself and you're like in the mix of taking a lot of rot damage, you're gonna want to click yourself like this and cast Blistering Scales, because I have had it, like I've actually died to Blistering Scales being cast on my teammate, because it casts on my enemy's target if I have one. I hate that about this ability. So please be careful about using this ability. This happens to me all the time. I mean to blistering scales myself, and I end up blistering scales my teammate because for some reason my enemy is targeting them at the time. You know, they're going to cast a CC on them or something like that, and they target them, and my blistering scales goes on them. It's so bad, man. Please, Blizzard, remove that one line. Not that Evoker needs any buffs, but that is a very annoying thing that happens. Draconic Attunements. One, I don't know why this is even needed, but it's super good. Basically, what Draconic Attunements does is it gives you 2 stances. So if you're like used to warriors, you have stances as warriors. If you're used to druid, you have different forms, but it gives you 2 stances. So Black Atonement basically allows, it gives you and your whole team a fort buff that's completely undispellable, and Bronze Attunement makes it so that your whole team gets a 10% movement speed increase, which is really good, especially with Aspect's Favor. So every single time I cast Hover, my Bronze Attunement makes everybody move 40% faster, so it gives everybody like a sprint. And every time I cast Obsidian Scales, it activates Black Attunement, and you get 10% health, which is crazy strong if you think about it. Like, getting 10% health is a huge buff. I mean, that's like 50k health, you know, or it could be even more. It could be like 70k health if you're a Death Knight, 75k health if you're a Death Knight, which is pretty insane for just a button press. On top of the fact that it's just a shield wall too. Now, one thing I will note is you're going to be hovering a lot more than you're going to be Obsidian Scalesing, just naturally. A lot of times in the beginning of the games, you know, you go out, you start to hover, you press Ebon Might, and this automatically sets you in Bronze Attunement. So you're going to want to have like a macro, or not a macro, a keybind for Bronze and Black Attunement. Now, I have these naturally from when I used to play Druid and stuff like that, so I can switch between these attunements pretty smoothly, but you want to get used to switching these manually without pressing Hover or Scales. And the reason is you go to Hover, and now your whole team gets like a 10% movement speed increase, which is cool, but really you want to stay in Black Atonement most of the time because you want your team to get a fort buff. Fort buff is way more important than the movement speed increase. So a lot of the times, you know, I'm pressing Hover, it puts me in Bronze Attunement, and while I'm hovering, I press Black Attunement as it comes up. I'm still hovering, but you know, I get the health bonus of Black Atonement. So I definitely want to be in Black Attunement as much as possible. We do take Tectonic Lotus. Upheaval deals 50% increased damage to the primary target and launches them higher. Now, this is super important because even on a 1 charge, you're doing a significant amount of damage, and it launches them higher, which gives you even more time to land the landslide, which is really nice. Now, Unyielding Domain sounds okay. The fact that it can't be interrupted is nice, but in PvP, it doesn't really matter because sometimes versus things that have heavy interrupts like shamans, we're taking obsidian metal sometimes anyways, so it gives that effect anyways. And then a 10% additional critical strike chance, it's good, but it's not as good as just it always doing 50% increased damage and launching somebody higher. So I do take Tectonic Lotus 100% of the time. I never take Regenerative Chitin. I take Molten Blood. This just gives us a massive absorb on a 30-second cooldown, which you can instantly reset with Time Skip. I'll show you. You cast Blistering Scales. I Time Skip, and boom, it's back already. So I can immediately apply it again, which is ridiculous, guys. It is crazy strong. Font of Magic. This just increases your empowerment spells maximum level by 1, and they reach it faster. So this is important for our Fire Breath. This doesn't matter at all for our Upheaval, but this is super important for our Fire Breath. This also makes our Tip the Scales Fire Breath hit way harder because of it. So super important talent here. This basically just makes our Fire Breath better. This doesn't really matter at all for Upheaval. I will say it's kind of nice because they reach maximum empowerment level 20% faster. So if you are casting a Fire Breath hard here, you'll actually get the maximum Fire Breath out sorry, way faster than if you were just casting it normally without Font of Magic. So I will say, take Font of Magic. We already went over Aspect's Favor. Definitely take this. Super important. I do take Hoarded Power. Now, this is nice because sometimes when you're casting Eruption, this just makes it so that you're not consuming the Essence Burst, so you get an extra Eruption. I will say, sometimes it's hard to just, like, balance this because, like, I'll be casting Living Flames into Eruptions. I'm trying to get Living Flame to proc my my Essence Burst here, and I go to cast an Eruption, and then I'll immediately start casting a Living Flame because I think it'll eat the Essence Burst, and instead it doesn't eat the Essence Burst. So that is a little annoying, but it's not the end of the world because I would rather just cast 2 Eruptions back to back if I knew I could. But yeah, so Hoarder Power, it's really good. It's a little confusing to use, but the 20% chance allows you to get a lot of Eruption casts off, a lot more than you normally would. Essence Burst reduce the cast time of Eruption by 40%. Huge, guys. This is insane. So normally Eruption's a 1.7 second cast time with the gear that I'm currently using, but if I get a Essence Burst real quick, it goes down to a 1 second cast time. That means it knocked off almost an entire second of cast time. 0.7 seconds of cast time. That's insane from one talent. Ignition Rush is a must pick for sure. Momentum Shift, also very good. Every single time you consume an Essence Burst, which the only way you consume an Essence Burst is by using Eruption, you gain 5% intelligence, stacking up to 2 times. Now, the important thing to note is you want to be stacking up your Essence Burst twice as much as possible. So you want 2 charges of it a lot of the time. Because if you, for instance, let me get 1 Essence Burst. So if I get 1 Essence Burst, luckily I get the reset here, so I get that. I get a reset again, which is crazy. And so, but either way, you want to get Momentum Shift because it's a 10% intellect increase when you get 2 Eruptions back to back that are Essence Burst, which is huge. I mean, let's see here. Let's see if I can get another Essence Burst here real quick, just so I can show you guys kind of how much intelligence I get. So here's 2 Essence Bursts. I'm going to Eruption twice. It's 800. It's another 800. So I actually gained 1600 intelligence from this one talent alone during our burst windows, which is really strong, guys. It's crazy strong. So yeah, Momentum Shift, definitely important. 1600 intelligence is crazy on top of our Ebonmite. That's not even Ebonmited either. So Ebonmite, it's probably over 2k that you're getting. So if you Ebonmite and you have Momentum Shift up, you actually probably have close to an extra 4k intelligence, which is crazy, guys. Crazy. Inferno's Blessing, this is great. Basically, you're going to cast Ebonmite, and then outside of your damage goes, you could just do a 1 charge Fire Breath and proc up Inferno's Blessing. Now, Inferno's Blessing actually does a pretty good amount of damage. Let's check back on some games here. Let's see here. I want to see a game where I actually have it up for a while. So, yeah, so it hit 4 times this game, but each time it hit, it did... sorry, I don't know what happened there. It changed. But yeah, basically each time it hit, it does anywhere from like 15 to 30k damage, which is really nice extra damage. I know it says 12k in the tooltip. That's a complete lie. It's a cap. I don't know why. It probably scales off of intelligence maybe. I don't know. Let's see. It doesn't. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you guys. But yeah, it does more than what it's saying. It does more than 12k. I've seen it hit for definitely over 35k for sure, which is really good for just a passive built into Fire Breath. Also, it's the leading into Plot the Future, which is really good because every single time we burst with Breath of Eons, we also get a massive Bloodlust for 15 seconds, which is crazy strong in PvP. It allows us to get our Essence Burst or our Eruption. If we get Essence Burst, our Eruptions cast at like half a second, which is crazy. Because you're doing like, at that point you're doing like 200k DPS, which is crazy. Yeah, Time Skip. This is a super important ability as an Augmentation Evoker. Something that's important to note about Time Skip is when you press Time Skip, it resets your cooldowns at 1000% faster for 3 seconds. So this means every single second is equal to 10 seconds. So every second you channel Time Skip, you're losing 10 seconds off all your cooldowns. So anything that is like a minute and a half cooldown, like Renewing Blaze, if I time skip it, it's now a minute cooldown. If I have Blistering Scales, which is a 30-second cooldown, and I time skip, it's a 0-second cooldown, so I get it back. If I have Rescue off cooldown, I lose 30 seconds off the cooldown. Anything that's on cooldown at the time skip. So if I Breath of Eons and I tip the scales, and I Fire Breath, and I Upheaval, and I do this, and I press Nullifying Shroud, and I time skip, all of them get reset by 30 seconds. So what I like to do is I like to press as many things as possible before I time skip. Because if I press just Breath of Eons and tip the scales and then I time skip, I'm losing out on the fact that I get 2 Upheavals instantly, like really fast. I get 2 Fire Breaths really fast. I also get 2 Blistering Scales really fast. I also get Rescue off really fast. If I do play Nullifying Shroud, I get it off way faster than any other Evoker in the game, all because I time skip. So you want to get as much value out of time skip as possible. A lot of times I'm saying you Upheaval into Landslide, time skip, you can upheaval into Landslide another 20 seconds later. It's beautiful. It's beautiful, guys. It's crazy. Yeah, super important. Time skip, crazy good. And the only reason it lasts 3 seconds is I take Tomorrow Today. I do not take Interwoven Threads. I think this is kind of bad. It's okay. 10% though on all your cooldowns, for instance, is like 3 seconds off of Fire Breath, 4 seconds off of Upheaval. It just doesn't seem like it makes that big of a difference on our goes. I would say Interwoven Threads is probably pretty good with like a mage maybe, because you're able to get like smaller goes consistently faster, whereas like with a Death Knight you want to make sure you have your goes really fast, and you're doing burstier goes. So you're taking time skip, 1 second cooldown off, 1 second longer. We do take accretion, like I said before. This just makes our eruption, make our upheaval, the cooldown 1 second less, which is really good. Because outside of our goes, we're just spamming eruption as much as possible. I already went over Plot the Future and Tomorrow Today, but we do take Overlord. Now, what this does is when you Breath of Eons on a group of people, it casts eruption on the first 3 enemies struck. So in arenas, this could be all of your arena targets. Now, if they're grouped tight enough, your eruption is going to hit all of them. So this hits all of them 3 times. So if you think about it, it's really doing like, let's see, it hits once. The eruption casts out once on one target, but that hits all 3, so you're actually hitting 3 times. And then you get another proc on the second target, which is another 3 times, so that's 6 times. And then another eruption proc, which is 9 times. So in one Breath of the Eons, you can actually hit one person 9 times because it AoE cleaves, because eruption actually hits everything between people nearby, which is pretty crazy if they're standing on top of each other, because eruption can do, like I said, like 100k damage. And if you're hitting everybody 9 times, you could actually do a lot of damage if they're really grouped up with Overlord. Like if they're standing literally directly on top of each other, you will probably get everybody to half health just on your Breath of Eons alone, and then your upheaval will do another like 40% of their health, and then the tip scales Fire Breath is like another 25% of their health. So you alone can kill an entire team by yourself in just 3 globals, not even, which is pretty crazy, especially because they're going to be all stunned during your Breath of Eons too. So as long as you can group people up, which is why I love playing with a Death Knight, because they do that for you, you can instant kill a lot of people. You can do a lot of damage every single 2 minutes. And the reason why we take time skip is it comes up faster. So like you will do your go, you'll time skip, and then now you only have 1.5 minutes on your go. Normally in the minute go, you can do like an upheaval and a landslide go. That way you have some pressure and you can force some things without using Breath of Eons. So yeah, that's super good, guys. But yeah, that's our augmentation side of the tree. I do have to say Prescience is pretty okay. I think it's pretty good. It just depends on what comp you're playing. I'm not gonna lie, this is actually really good with playing with mages, because they hit so many times with like Arcane Barrage or Arcane Missiles that you'll probably get a lot of procs of Prescience. And if they get Fate Mirror, you can actually hit for quite a bit of damage. People can hit for, you know, easily 20k extra damage every single time they do big damage. It's pretty crazy. So yeah, I would say Prescience if you're playing with a mage is pretty good. I don't know what I would sacrifice though. I'd probably sacrifice Inferno's Blessing and Plot the Future, at least to go like Power the Nexus, Prescience, and then maybe I would sacrifice Accretion and Overlord to get Anachromism and Fate Mirror. So I might sacrifice these 2 and fill out this tree here. Something like this. I'll just show you guys real quick. Like that. If I'm playing with a mage. Maybe. And that's a heavy maybe. I'm not sure. But either way, yeah, that's my augmentation tree. I hope you guys enjoyed that. So now we're going into PvP talents. All right, so to look at PvP talents here, we have, Divide and Conquer. This is great. So every single time you Breath of Eons, you're basically putting up curtains. It's kind of like a smoke bomb. The problem with Breath of Eons is it says that it prevents line of sight to enemies outside its walls, right? Enemies. It specifically says enemies. But your allies also get line of sighted. So if you Divide and Conquer and your healer is outside of the wall, you're smoke bombing yourself in your wall as well. So I don't know if this is a bug or what, but it is super annoying, and it makes Divide the Conquer really hard to use because you have to be really in sync with your whole team to make sure you're not accidentally cutting off line of sight points to any of your teammates as well. So yeah, Divide and Conquer is a high risk, high reward play, I guess you could say, but I don't like it that much. Even playing with a Death Knight who can grip people out of position and I can Divide and Conquer, like I can Breath of Eons over them and cause them to be out of line of sight of their team, I still don't like it that much. It does do a lot of damage though when people walk through it, which is kind of nice. It's kind of like a Ring of Fire built into a smoke bomb. Dream Projection, this is super good. I would say I take this probably like 90% of games. I actually take it over this. This is kind of my build most of the time. But yeah, I take Dream Projection a lot. What Dream Projection is basically it's an AoE dispel. It does a lot of healing too, but I use it to get my healer out of crowd control like Polymorph, Fear, Silence, anything like that I can get our team out of, which is really nice. Because considering it's a 1 minute cooldown, and if I time skip it, it's a 30-second cooldown, I can get people out of trap with this. So look, if you're playing against a hunter that doesn't play the dispel trap, the non-dispellable trap, you can Dream Projection it, which is pretty good. I will say Nullifying Shroud is okay. It's okay because it's a 1.5 minute cooldown. It's really annoying if you don't have a purge on the enemy team. So like if the enemy team doesn't have a purge, Nullifying Shroud is really good. So if you're playing against like something like Death Knight, Windwalker, Preservation Evoker or something like that. So like the Walking Dead with a Preservation Evoker, or the Walking Dead with like a Resto Druid or something like that. Nullifying Shroud is pretty good because they can't get it off, and it lasts 30 seconds. So they'll have to spam CC you. The only thing is if you're playing against something like a Restoration Druid, they might just spam cast Cyclone, and they can Cyclone it off of you by just spamming it over and over and over again. A lot of times there's other Evoker players, I'll take Dreamcatcher. That way, if they do play Nullifying Shroud, I can just spam Sleepwalk on them to remove the Nullifying Shroud. Because a lot of times I play compositions that don't have a purge, and I noticed Nullifying Shroud was giving us issue until I started playing Dreamcatcher, and then I just spam Sleep until the Nullifying Shroud comes off, which normally comes off in like 10 seconds, and then you're good to go. But yeah, Nullifying Shroud's okay. Unburdened Flight, this is great versus melee cleaves. Hover makes you immune to movement speed reduction effects. This is really good versus Death Knights because Death Knights rely on their Chains of Ice so much. And this makes you immune to their Chains of Ice, which is crazy strong. It's also really good versus Warriors, just kiting wise. But it's also hard to kind of fit it in. I think sometimes I'll take it over my Born in Flame. And sometimes I'll take it over Dream Projection, but most of the time I am taking Dreamwalker's Embrace, and I'll explain that a little later. Scurrying Flame, I do take this as mages because I love being able to Fire Breath purge off Alter Time. And you can tip the scales Fire Breath, and it'll immediately purge like 4 or 5 effects, which is really strong. Because versus like Resto Druids, for instance, if you tip the scales Fire Breath, any target that gets hit by a Fire Breath, it's removing all of their heal over time effects, which is crazy good, guys. It is very good. So yeah, Scurrying Flame versus Resto Druids, Scurrying Flame versus Mages, I take most of the time. Swoop Up. Now, I have not played with Swoop Up too much, but I do think it's actually pretty good because you can grab an enemy and fly them pretty far and make them line of sight their healers. You can make a healer line of sight their teammate. You can pull the healer really far from their teammates while your team just destroys somebody. So, yeah, Swoop Up is actually really good. It's like a good form of crowd control. It's also a good way to get 2 people into your Breath of Eons because you can swoop up and then you can landslide root them and then you can Breath of Eons over them and you're hitting 2 targets without needing a death grip. So this is actually probably pretty good as long as you're playing without a Death Knight. The nice part is I do play with a Death Knight a lot of the time, so swoop up is kind of unneeded. But it is still really good. You can also pull people through pillars with this, which is crazy. So if like so for instance, if this guy is the enemy and I'm standing like this on the pillar, I can click right here and it will literally pull him through this pillar up, like, which is pretty pretty dumb if you ask me. So yeah, that's Swoop Up. Obsidian Metal, this just makes it so that when you cast your shield wall, it's also an Aura Mastery, so you actually are immune to getting kicked, which is really good as an Augmentation Evoker because Ebonmite, if you get kicked on Ebonmite, it locks you out of everything. If you get kicked on Eruption, it locks you out of everything except for Azure Strike, which Azure Strike is pretty garbage for Augmentation Evoker. So yeah, you're gonna be you're gonna want to kind of be able to shield wall yourself and get that Aura Mastery. If you're playing against like Shamans, because they have a short kick, or even versus like Death Knight, it could be pretty good. So if you're playing against something like like Shaman, Windwalker Monk, you might want to take something like that. It's a hard toss-up, though, because Unburdened Flight is also really good in those situations. But yeah, I do like taking Obsidian Metal, especially when I know that the game's going to be short. If I know the game's going to be short, I like taking Obsidian Metal because then I'll be able to get more casts off without fear of getting kicked. And the other nice part is I don't have to worry about using my shield wall and losing out on my defensive just to try to be a little bit more aggressive. You know what I'm saying? So, pretty good. Chrono Loop is actually really good. I just think people don't know how to use it that much, but it is really good. A lot of the times as like a Death Knight Evoker comp, we get people to like 20% health in almost all of our goes. So if I can get somebody to 20% of their health, chrono loop them, and then 5 seconds later they get chrono loop back to the same spot at 20% health, and I time like an upheaval, I will kill them every single time. The thing is you have to get really good at timing with chrono loop. So yeah, practice it. But basically what it does is if your enemy is at say 30% health, you chrono loop them, and then they get healed to full health after 5 seconds or when they're dispelled. It doesn't matter, because when they get dispelled, it doesn't just remove it. It brings them back to whatever they were at when you cast it. So if they're at 30% health, it'll bring them back to 30% health. Now the problem with chrono loop is if for some reason you chrono loop them at like say 50% health and they get dropped to 20% health, after 5 seconds, they're going to go back up to 50% health. So you have to be really careful when you use this because you can accidentally screw yourself over pretty easily. But most of the time, it's pretty easy to get off. I use it kind of like an execute. So, you get somebody to 20% health. You say, oh, I'm going to like basically execute them. You chrono loop them. And then after 5 seconds, they'll teleport back to execute range and just slap them with like an upheaval or even an eruption. But a lot of the times I count down my chrono loop. So I'm in communication with my teammate. I'll say I chrono loop them at 20%, and then I say 3, 2, 1, and chrono loop resets back. Boom, they die. Really, really good. Crazy. Born in Flame is super good for bursting. Basically, every single time you cast Emite, you get a free Living Flame, which is instant cast. The nice part about this is it also procs off Breath of Eons. So if I Breath of Eons like this, I get my Burnout cast. I can cast a Living Flame, I can cast a Living Flame, I can cast Ebonmite, I can cast a Living Flame, and then 2 seconds later, I can cast another Living Flame. So that's 4 Living Flames in like less than 2 seconds, which is pretty crazy. You can see how much damage it did. So yeah, having Born in Flame is very strong for Augmentation Evoker. Very strong. So yeah, that's pretty good. Dreamcatcher, also very good. Sleepwalk has no cooldown. I use this for caster teams because a lot of times we don't have a lot of answers for casters, and the only way I deal with them is by spam CCing them when we're trying to play defensive. So, I'll sleepwalk one person, they'll get dispelled, I'll sleepwalk them again for 4 seconds, and then I'll sleepwalk them again for 2 seconds, and then I swap my sleep to their teammate as that 2 seconds lasts, so they can't kick me. I'll sleepwalk their teammate for 8 seconds. Their healer most likely won't have a dispel for another 2 seconds. So then they kind of weigh the odds. So they last the whole 8 seconds, and then you sleepwalk them for 4 seconds. They most of the time dispel that one, and then you sleepwalk them for 2 seconds again. So you can actually CC a whole team for a very long time. You can note in some of the games I play versus casters. Let's see if I can find a caster game. So like this game, I probably, not that one. Let's see. There is a couple of games where I've sleepwalked people like a total of like literally over 30 times. It's pretty crazy. It's a pretty good ability. I think we kill those people in the beginning every time. But yeah. So Sleepwalk is really strong, and having it on a no cooldown, a little bit longer of a cast time, not the end of the world because Sleepwalk's actually a pretty short cast to begin with. It's pretty good. It's pretty strong. Dreamwalker's Embrace. Now this is great. This ability is insane. It accommodates for like 15% of my overall damage. Some games where it's like cleaves. Like this one, it was low, and it's still like 6% of my damage. The way I keep this up like this, 7% of my damage that game. It's pretty crazy, dude. And the way I keep this up a lot of the time, because you have to cast Verdant Embrace on a teammate to tether yourself to them, is I actually macro my teammate's name into my Verdant Embrace, and I'll talk about that in a little bit when we go over macros. But basically, Dreamwalker's Embrace, you want to keep it up as much as possible because it actually does more healing to you than if you just Verdant Embrace yourself, because it siphons life from enemies, and it also slows them while increasing your movement speed and your teammate's movement speed. Crazy good, guys. It is really strong. The only thing is you have to remain within 30 yards of your ally. So you have to stay kind of close range in order to keep the tether lasting. The way I gauge this, though, is I just try to stay within living flame of my ally. If I ever fall out of living flame range of my ally, I'm assuming my Dreamwalker Embrace will fall off, because living flame has a 25-yard range. So yeah, just try to keep an eye on that. Try to keep yourself in range of this as much as possible, to keep this uptime as much as possible, because you want it to last 10 seconds every single time, and you'll actually do a lot of damage with it. Time stop, this is very good versus like rogue mage. This is really good versus a lot of compositions. Now you can time stop your teammate even, which is crazy, but every single minute you can prevent people from taking damage for 5 seconds, which is crazy strong. It is insane. Every minute. It's a very strong button. You know, you think, okay, well, like, if I'm going to take Dream Projections a 1 minute cooldown, I almost might as well take Time Stops in certain situations. If you Time Stop at the right time, you can actually prevent yourself from taking any burst damage whatsoever. So like if a warrior charges you and you see him pop Avatar, you can press Time Stop and you might avoid the Thunderous Roar, you might avoid, you know, a massive Mortal Strike, you can avoid the Blade Storm damage completely, and every single minute you can do this, and you can time skip it down to 30-second cooldown, so you can time stop yourself, time skip, and then you can time stop a teammate. So if they swap to your teammate, it's pretty ridiculous, honestly. Pretty crazy. But yeah, that's our honor talents. Most of the time, though, I'm taking Dreamwalker's Embrace, I'm taking Born in Flame, and I'm taking Dream Projection a lot of the time. I do think I will start messing with Time Stop more, because it is actually very, very strong. It's pretty crazy, and you can avoid taking a lot of damage with it. The other thing about Time Stop, though, that is also kind of nice is, say your teammate is playing, like you're playing with a Mistweaver, right? And they press Life Cocoon on a teammate. You can actually time stop them, and when they come out of the time stop, that Life Cocoon will still have its full duration left, whatever that duration is, which is kind of cool. Now, you don't really want to overlap cooldowns a lot like that, but you can if you need to, which is nice. The only negative side of Time Stop is if you have, like, for instance, a ridiculous amount of bleed effects or something like that on yourself, and you time stop yourself, the problem is those bleed effects will still remain at their duration the whole time the time stop is, and then when you come out of the time stop, they'll still be ticking. So this doesn't remove things like that. It's not like technically an ice block. The nice part is so you can see it says Auras does not progress. So if I put something on cooldown like this, and I play time stop, and I time stop myself, you'll see the cooldown doesn't go down the whole duration of the time stop. So you have to be very careful about when you press time stop, but it is a very good button, in my opinion. I think it's pretty solid. I would say so. I'll respond to that guy in a second. But yeah, so we're all set with PvP talents. Now we're going to move into our items. So there is 2 builds for gear, guys. Now I go kind of a split between them, but some people stack a lot of haste and some people stack a lot of mastery. It depends on what team compositions you're playing. You do want to stack versatility, though. Versatility is like your main stat. I can get even more versatility, and I need to, but I do have to trade up some pieces. But either way, I get 2 set. I do have 3 set pieces because I actually like the way the set pieces stack out the gear. You can see this is 1 set piece, this is Haste Mastery. This is another set piece, which is a Verse Mastery, which I like. You can probably get rid of the gloves, though, if you're going a Haste build. And you get the helmet, which is also Haste Mastery. I do get the Verse Mastery necklace. A lot of people are getting the Verse Haste necklace, but I do stack a lot of Verse Haste gems. You can see all my gems are Verse Haste. So, yeah. But yeah, you want to stack up basically whichever you feel is a good balance between haste and mastery. I do get the undulating spore cloak. Now you can craft this by using the work orders, I think they're called, or the crafting orders. So yeah, you want to crafting order up a undulating spore cloak. The way you do this is you go to the conquest vendor here, and you talk to the conquest guy, and you will look for the specific thing that this right here. So it's a lesser trophy of conquest, craftable epic items in neck, back, wrist, and fingers. So you're looking for a back because the spore cloak is the back. You get this piece. This allows you to scale it to 450 in arenas, and you bring this to the crafting orders. You basically make yourself the spore cloak just using the simple ingredients, but as long as you toss this in there, you're good to go. And you have a spore cloak that is ridiculous in arenas. I do get I did craft myself the Flame Touch Chainmail. You don't have to do this. I just did this because I like the balanced stats a little bit more. You could probably get the normal chest piece. I also did this because I was gearing super early on, and they gave me a free chest piece, I believe, with this. So I just took the free chest piece, and I said, whatever. But you can actually just get the normal Verse Mastery chest piece. It's not the end of the world. You don't have to craft it. So yeah, you can do that. This is actually pretty good, probably because you get more versatility than mastery. So I actually might pick that up. But yeah, so I would definitely get the Verse Mastery chest piece. We do look at this. We get the Verse Haste wrists, which is really good. And then I go the staff because I get Verse Haste. The reason why I go the staff is because I stack a lot of mastery in other pieces. Some people do go the mastery mace, the Verse Mastery mace, and they crit Verse offhand, which is perfectly fine. You can also craft a Verse Mastery or Reversed Haste offhand as well, but a lot of times I just go this. I like the staff because, like I said, I stack my Verse Mastery elsewhere. I do get the waist. I also get the legs that are, like I said, the set piece, and then I get the boots, which are Verse Mastery. I get my ring, which is Verse Mastery. I get another ring, which is Verse Mastery. And this is where I'm saying I stack a lot of extra mastery. Some people get Verse Haste, which is perfectly fine. And then you get the Haste proc trinket, not the active on use. I do have the active on use, though, for when I play Devastation Evoker. I prefer the on use when I play Devastation Evoker, but as a Augmentation Evoker, getting this proc as well as Sophic proc is pretty crazy. And obviously we got the Medallion. Medallion's super crucial. Just gets you out of CC. You don't want to go Adaptation. Adaptation is terrible, guys. I see people with Adaptation at low rating all the time. Please stop using Adaptation trinkets. They're horrible because you can easily bait them out and then you'll die 100-0 in a stun. It's super simple. If you're playing versus a rogue, they can just sap off your adaptation. If you're playing versus a mage, they can poly off your adaptation. If you're playing versus an evoker, you can sleepwalk off the adaptation, and then you will die 100-0 in a stun every time. Please stop playing adaptation trinkets, guys. But yes, Medallion is where it's at. I will say enchants. I do go Regenerative Leech because this actually brings my Leech to 4% instead of just the 3% from Regenerative Magic. So I get an extra 1% Leech from that. I do go the Speed enchant on my bracers and the Speed enchant on my boots. That brings me up to 9% movement speed, 4% Leech, which is nice. I get Waking Stats. This just increases all your stats by 150, which isn't amazing, but it's better than the other ones in my opinion. I don't think you need the intellect specific one, which gives you more mana. I don't think you need that as an Augmentation Evoker. Let's see here. I do get Sophic. Sophic Devotion this late in the season is just super good to get a primary stat increase. I do get the Intelligence Stamina legs. These are called Spell Thread. So if you're looking on the auction house, just look up Spell Thread. You'll find them up there. I get Haste enchants. The only reason I go Haste enchants, though, is because I stack so much mastery, guys. So if you're stacking a lot of Haste, you can go Versatility enchants. If you're stacking a lot of mastery, go Haste enchants so you make up for the Haste loss. So, you can balance out your haste and mastery any way you like, but make sure it's pretty balanced. And then also, like I said, you want to stack up as much versatility as possible. But yeah, that's basically it for gearing for Augmentation Evoker. It's not the end of the world. Just to give you an idea what the mastery does is it increases the duration of your Breath of Eons, your Shifting Sands, which is your mastery. And basically, whenever you cast a Fire Breath or an Upheaval, Shifting Sands sends them basically 11 to 12% versatility, which is pretty crazy because versatility is like our main stat. You want to be main statted up as much as possible. But yeah, so this is what you're looking at. Give me 1 second. My dog is trying to eat a plant, and I don't want him to eat that, so be right back. Okay, so I'm back from my dog trying to eat a plant, which is crazy. Guy is insane. But yeah, so our crit strike is like 5% because we have no crit, which is fine. You don't really need a lot of crit as an Augmentation Evoker, though I will say when you do get crits, it is super satisfying. So yeah, that's our stat priority. I hope you guys understand that. Now we're going to be moving into our rotation. Alright, so moving into our burst rotation as Augmentation Evoker, the main thing you want to look for as an Augmentation Evoker is to stack up your Essence Burst. So you see I have 2 stacks here. Something crucial to do is when you get the 2 stacks, you want to spend them at the same time. so that you can stack up your momentum shift. This will give you a 10% difference in intelligence when you're trying to burst, which is really good. So we're going to just stack this up again. You can see I get my trinket proc here, which is also really good to line up. But if you can line those up, great. If you can't, not the end of the world. Basically, the damage go is going to be Breath of Eons, upheaval into the Tip the Scales Fire Breath. But before you upheaval and you Fire Breath and all that, you're going to want to try and get this up, the momentum shift. If you get momentum shift up, you get the, like I said, the 10% intelligence, which is super important. So here we go. I'll show you guys how it goes. We go Breath of Eons, we upheaval, we Fire Breath, and you can see each one of those did over 200k damage, which is disgusting. And then we spam cast as many eruptions as we can, and that will lead us to do big burst damage on the Breath of Eons proc when it comes off. Now, every single time you do that, your main damage is obviously coming from the upheaval and the Fire Breath, but your eruptions also do a significant amount of damage. So you want to make sure you're getting off as many eruptions as possible. And like I said, the Breath of Eons does give you Ebonmite, and then upheaval increases that Ebonmite duration for another 2 seconds. So you have it for 8 seconds or like 7 seconds, and then you just eruption spam, which is also really good. Also, Fire Breath gives you duration. So when you Breath of Eons, you upheaval, Tip the Scales Fire Breath, you're looking at 9 seconds of Ebonmite as long as you don't cast anything else. So it's super simple burst goes, but they do a lot of damage. Now outside of our burst windows, we're going to be casting our Ebonmites as much as possible. Now Ebonmite is an amazing tool because what Ebonmite does is it just increases all of your teammates' primary stat by 12%, which is pretty crazy. And it also causes you to deal 24% more damage. So as long as you have Ebonmite up, you're going to be able to do a lot of damage, right? So outside of our Breath of Eons goes, when we don't have burst, one thing we're going to be looking for is a good time to time skip. Now, most of the time, like I said before, a good time to time skip is when a lot of your cooldowns are on cooldown. So before anything, like I said, you want to Oppressive Roar. Obviously, you can also rescue. Some things to look for that are good to get on cooldown before you time skip is like your shield wall or your blistering scales or your landslide. And so when you don't have a go, so we're going to do a short go really quick here. When we don't have the burst here, like I said, we're going to be casting eruption as much as possible. You're just spamming eruptions, and when everything is on cooldown, that's when you're going to want to time skip. Most of the time, I suggest hovering behind a pillar to time skip so you don't get kicked on it, and you don't get like stunned on it or anything like that. So you want to be behind a pillar and time skip then, if you can. If you can't, not the end of the world. Try to bait out kicks. A lot of times I like to spam cast eruptions or fire living flame, and if I get kicked on that, I can cast time skip, because time skip is actually on the arcane tree. So you can get kicked on Ebonmite, you can get kicked on upheaval, you can get kicked on eruption, and you can still cast time skip. So it's actually really good to bait those out just so you can get a good time skip off. You want to make sure your time skip is the full duration. But basically, outside of our big Breath of Eons go, all we're looking to do is cast Ebonmite. I say that I have an upheaval proc. I upheaval into a landslide, which stuns the target, and then I go for big fire breaths as much as possible until they come out of the stun, hit them with a fire breath, and then most of the time I'm spamming living flame. Now, like I said, because we go leaping flames, it's really important that you empower up your your fire breath as much as possible. That way your living flame cleaves as many things as possible, which gives us as many essence bursts as possible, so we can spam cast eruptions as much as possible. I know that's a lot to say, but yeah, so basically every single time we don't have our big damage go, which our big damage go is just a pressing roar, Breath of Eons, upheaval, Tip the Scales, fire breath. That's it. It's that simple, guys. Every single time you're about to go, you just a pressing roar beforehand, take your time with it, because you just want to make sure you land it, land your Breath of Eons, upheaval, fire breath, and then you're just spamming eruption, guys. Super simple. Eruption. Oh, I'm out of essence. I spam living flame. I get an essence burst. I cast eruption. Oh, I didn't use it. I cast eruption again. And that's it, guys. That's really it. It's that simple to burst as an augmentation evoker. Alright guys, we're going to go over some macros for the augmentation evoker really quick. Super easy stuff. We have landslide on a /cast at cursor macro. Basically what this lets you do is you can instantly cast landslide anywhere, and it just follows your cursor, so you don't have to worry about clicking the ground when it has to come out, which makes upheaval stuns way easier. You just upheaval, then you press press Landslide. As long as your cursor is over the target, they'll get stunned. Very strong. I do have Rescue for my teammate. It's just slash cast at Amatox, which is my teammate, Rescue, which is really good. And then also I have slash cast for my healer as well. I do have a fake casting macro built into my Blessing of the Bronze, which is really good for when you're in hover and you want to be able to fake cast stuff. Like Ebonmite, for instance, you can still fake cast by just pressing your buff button, which is pretty smooth feeling for me. It's the best way to get a stop casting macro in my current situation with my key bindings. But yeah, so I just macroed into with my buff, so not too bad. And then I have a focus Sleepwalk macro. This just lets you sleepwalk a focus target, super easy. I have a focus Quell macro, which allows you to kick a focus target. Pretty simple stuff. And then I have a super important Verdant Embrace macro. The reason why this is important is because I play Dreamwalker's Embrace like nearly every game. And basically, I have it slash targeting my DPS teammate, who's going to be in combat most of the time. And what that allows me to do is it allows me to immediately, without having to target them on my party frames or anything like that, Verdant Embrace to them. So my Dreamwalker's uptime is a lot higher than it was before. I was like at a 20% uptime before, and now it's like, I would say 80% of the time I have it just kicking, which is pretty insane. Super important. But yeah, that's my macros really for Augmentation Evoker. Super simple stuff. Nothing crazy. I'll have them in the description below, so check that out there if you need some help with them. Just write a comment down below and let me know if you need help with the macros. And now, without further ado, we're moving on to some Augmentation Evoker gameplay.
It's fucking PvE logic now.
Nice.
Across.
Crush. Oh, it does. Nice.
This is gonna be a long game. Run on this guy's port with me.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah. Nice. I land.
I cross.
Beautiful. Trinket is
Nice.
I don't know. Alright, we should run.
Yeah, I'm skipping here. They still haven't really gotten their go.
I'm drinking. I'm back to me. He's on middle.
Whenever you have your people son,
I have it.
Okay. It's gonna be weird because they can't blind.
Oh,
they go
bad here. Yeah.
I found it.
Good turn, bro.
Super fine. This is gonna be big damage here. Quick looking play. Leg swap half.
Yeah, get it whenever you can.
Okay, yeah, I get it in a sec, right? No. Nice.
There we go.
Nice, yeah. 30 seconds.
We can run it.
Yeah.
I'm scared on my next go. Hopefully we get the first.
We'll get his first. He also just fired up. Yeah, once his necrotic thing, or nullifying card wears off, we're good to go.
See me over here?
I do.
I can't help because he's death advance now.
Nice.
Get it. Here, come up to me.
Yeah. That was a pre-thing. Alright, I have whenever. Oh, nice! Fucking grip, dude. That's insane. Actually a game-winning grip right there. Oh no. Still doing the damn. Yeah, I think he still does. Oh!
Yeah. You ready? Ready?
Yeah. I get it.
Across stage prep.
Oh. Just drink it from everything. A time skip here. Should be okay.
Good for you.
Okay, nice. I have enough people go here. Sending. I got a full sleep on the healer here. Oh, he fades it. Oh, fuck me. Okay, healer. Oh, fuck.
Watched.
I get you out of it. Yeah, that's good. I can't stop with fear. I got the full sleep.
Blinded.
What's showing? I can chill wall. I'll chill wall.
Storming warrior.
Just cutting forever. They're going ammo.
Talks.
Yeah, you're good.
I'm stunned. You're dead.
I got you.
I save you up.
Brenner. Trying to kill it. Love it. I'm gonna sleep the pally. It's full. It's dispelled. It's
fine. That's long. And what is this? 8 seconds. We have a kill.
Yep.
After Blade Storm.
Dodged.
Can't stop. Shield wall. Oh. Nice.
Go anyway.
Yep, yep. I still land. I still land. Crush, crush. Flame hands.
Carry too. We use a lot. Zone you.
Good warrior. Twin Grim. I'm gonna talk to you. They're now restricted
Yeah,
this
no.
watch, man. Fuck. Oh, bad. I got that.
I have a people. I'm gonna get fucked here.
You're good, you're good.
Okay. About to upheaval. Right. Here, I got it.
Dodged,
I
dodged.
landed, I landed, I landed. I can't fucking get every single time. Nice, that was good one. Good lobby.
Weird.
Oh, good.
I'm fine, I'm fine. Yep, no worries. Time
It's
skip.
unfortunate that I need to stand still to heal.
Yeah, I'm gonna sleep the right here. We're just living for 30 seconds. Not even 10 seconds. But as I said.
10 seconds?
Yeah, I have 10
What do you have in
seconds.
time?
I have breath.
Okay, okay.
I'm gonna sleep the healer. There kicks. Yeah, trigger this. Sleep healer. Get the full sleep.
Go ahead, go
Yeah,
ahead.
that's it.
I'm gonna recon.
I
Oh no.
got you. Yep, no worries, no worries, no worries.
Couldn't.
Alright, get here. Big jam, big fucking jam. Crush him.
I thought.
Beautiful. Wow, they both die. Okay.
Yeah. See what they're doing to me. I'm
Yeah. Killing the war banner.
Just play to live. I don't. Fuck, dude. I zone myself. I don't
Twin
die.
Grim.
I'm fine. We're gonna get this. Nice. Perfect. Perfect, perfect. We kill her.
I cross.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Good shit. Snarl.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for my Augvoker Ultimate Guide. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I hope you learned something new about Augmentation Evoker. If you did, please feel free to like, subscribe, drop a comment down below telling me how much you liked it. Also, feel free to join my Discord, that's going to be in the description, as well as go and follow my stream at Twitch. I'm going to show that also in the description and in the video, so I appreciate you guys as always, and hey, we're well on our way to 1,700 subs, which is actually insane, so I can't thank you guys enough. I appreciate it, and I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Peace.